very helpful because I actually became a health and safety manager for a fairly large part of their operation. I was reporting directly to vice president, doing all of this under the age of 30, where we were making these huge strides. And it was amazing, but that was where I experienced my worst bout of burnout in my career. So came out of that with what I learned in strategy, what I learned from mindfulness and being a yoga instructor, and the rest is kind of history from there. It's led me right to where I am today.
Our mission, and we choose to accept it, is zero injuries and zero environmental impact. A healthy workforce and environment is key to our nation's continued success. The Mission Zero podcast is a deep dive with the industry's top experts into the health, safety, and environmental aspects of today's workplace. Our mission is to be a platform for new ideas and strategies that, when implemented, will improve our safety, our environment, and how we govern our business. We are making the world safer, and we're going to have fun doing it.
Okay, welcome back everyone to the Season 2's Episode 3 of the Mission Zero podcast. Today I'm back home where I'm from in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a wonderful guest with me today, Subena Colligan. Welcome, Subena.
Thank you for having me.
Subena is a safety professional, a life and professional coach. I don't know if she likes that, but I like that title for her. And she is more importantly, a mindful strategist.
Yes, all of those.
Thank you so much for being my guest. I spotted you on LinkedIn a while back, and I loved, in doing these podcasts, I've seen people in the safety industry, I've seen people in this business and in this world, and they're in it in the very smallest way. But there's some people out there who are pushing it, and some people out there who are trying to improve it. Some people out there doing other things, and they're really trying to improve life and safety, and actually, in your case, the life of the safety professional. So we'll get to that. So in the meantime, if you don't mind, you've got an incredible resume with a wide, varied past. So would you mind go ahead and give us a little bit about your history and how you got here today?
Absolutely. So I am like many health and safety professionals. I did not know that this pathway existed. Mm-hmm. The Air Force chose it for me. And I credit that to the science classes that I took in high school. But so I joined the military, and they said, hey, you're going to be a bioenvironmental engineer, which in the Air Force was a much cheaper way to have industrial hygienists. So they didn't pay for that. So I went in and I actually said, you know what, I'm going to be a doctor. And I just knew I wanted to help people. And I didn't know that by being an industrial hygienist, I was doing all of that and more. Mm-hmm. I was finding operations where we were working with, with substances that cause cancer in the long run, right? We see all about the commercials or the claims that happen, but we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So I was kind of a silent hero in the background, really loved it, decided to continue pursuing school in that way. And because I did everything industrial hygiene, I went to school for safety. I wanted to make sure I was fast in that space. And after 6 years, left the Air Force, and I went to work for an aircraft manufacturer. Again, working with lots of substances that cause cancer, right? To keep something in the air and not rust as soon as it got up there, it was pretty hazardous.
And what company was that?
Gulfstream Aerospace, down in Savannah, Georgia, actually. Okay. And it was in Savannah where I kind of hit this other piece of my life. I started doing a lot more yoga. So I discovered yoga, became a certified or registered yoga instructor. And it was very helpful because I actually became a health and safety manager for a fairly large part of their operation. I was reporting directly to the vice president, doing all of this under the age of 30, where we were making these huge strides. And it was amazing. But that was where I experienced my worst bout of burnout in my career. So came out of that with what I learned in strategy, what I learned from mindfulness and being a yoga instructor. And the rest is kind of history from there. It's led me right to where I am today.
Where do you, how do you think the burnout, how did that happen? What was going on that led to that?
Ooh, so there's a couple of things. I think in our career field, we have this idea that, and a lot of professionals do, but in health and safety, we're always proving ourselves. So it's work really hard and you're always on call. Right? You don't really take rest. And my first duty assignment for 4 months, we worked 12-hour shifts, 5 days a week to prepare for an audit. And that was my introduction to this is what you do. That did not shift. It didn't shift in my deployment. It didn't shift when I went to private industry. It was...
So this was consistent, a safety professional anywhere, any industry, any place?
Yes. I just talked to someone that she's about 5 years away from retirement. And she said, I'm glad that we're doing all this burnout stuff now, but I've been burnt out for over a decade. She said, there's no hope. I'm just waiting for retirement. And it was sort of like this rite of passage.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. As I mentioned before in my typical work, my customers are generally the oil and gas industry, and they were an industry that couldn't shut down completely. They shut down a lot, but they couldn't shut down completely. And the safety professionals were doing the job of 3 people.
Yes.
And getting in front of them was impossible. They were, when you say burnout, just the look on their face, when I mentioned that to them or when I talk to them, I can see that but even before that, even in normal times, you're right. They're on call 24 hours a day. People, you're either the number one fan or the worst enemy of everyone, depending on what day, what's going on during those audits. It's a terrible time. And when but if they need something, if you had an injury, you're everything, and they need you desperately. So it's a thankless job, in a large part of it, until they actually need you. But if they actually need you, they're in trouble anyway.
Yes, and it's difficult because you're either everybody's best friend or you're public enemy number one.
Exactly.
How do you reserve the energy to walk into a space and either be loved or hated, preparing mentally to be rejected, and then called upon desperately and loved when sometimes, not saying this for everybody, however, there are times where you just want to say, I told you so.
Yeah.
I tried to do this. I tried to work proactively, and now I have to churn my wheels because you didn't listen in the first place. That's really
It's so
tough.
much worse than oil and gas. Let me explain why. Imagine the oil and gas worker. They are the very definition of, this is how we do it. This is the way it's always done type of people. And granted, they're the toughest, hardest working people on earth, but they don't want to hear things about safety. They have the worst looking hands and injuries all over their body, but they don't want to focus on that. They just want to work really hard. So early in your career, you said it sounds like you were dealing a lot with agents, biological things that cause cancer. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you went about increasing safety when it comes to that type of issue?
Yeah. So first of all, going into the military, there's tons of people that are 17, 18, 20 years old, like the most invincible people on the planet. Right?
They're all tough.
Yes. And then you put them in the uniform and
Feel even tougher.
It's very difficult, right? The old guy in the military is in their 30s. So, right, a lot of them are retiring by 38, no later than 40. So we're working with this demographic that is a little bit harder to influence in the first place. But if you imagine what it takes to create a stealth aircraft, right? And I worked only with fighter jets my entire career. So it was working with carcinogens. We had other issues. I don't know if you ever heard of the F-22 hypoxia events that happened.
I didn't.
Yeah, so F-22 pilots were actually experiencing a displacement of oxygen, which was causing them to pass out while they were flying. So
Worst timing ever.
yes. So I actually had the on-call phone one night because we had a rotation. Everybody got the on-call phone in case something happened in the middle of the night. Back to the fact that we just don't take a lot of time off. And I got the phone call and they were like, we have an F-22 pilot in the air. He's smelling something sweet. He's getting ready to come back down. And that sweet smell was actually an indication of what was going on. So for my base, I got the first F-22 hypoxia call, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. But it didn't matter that I was one of the youngest in the shop. I had
You were the one there.
Yeah, I was there, right? I had Lockheed Martin looking at me, have this pilot that is really probably at this point thinking about his life, his family, everything that, he's done and trained for in his life to make sure he landed perfectly fine. And the base commander saying, hey, what's going on? Because he gets the phone call as well. And I did end up having backup. The backup was someone that was a higher rank than me. However, she didn't know what to do either. So, we got to do these really important things, right? For people that may not have even known that we existed.
Yeah.
And we were taking air samples out of people's lungs into vacuum containers. So they would have to blow and then keep blowing so that we could get as much of anything out of their lungs to send to a lab. Just to figure out what was going on.
I would have figured they had something in the actual, on the plane that judged their oxygen levels and how well they were processing oxygen through their mask. Is that not true?
So they have the O-bogs, and what ended up happening that they found out was that it was actually their suits. So when you're up in the air and you have the G-forces, your blood circulates differently. And by the way, I didn't understand G-forces in physics until I got to fly in a plane. I was like, oh, this is how it feels. But it actually inflates to monitor the blood flow. So it keeps it, it regulates it. Yeah. But they were overinflating. But we didn't know that, right? It took a very holistic approach to understand what was happening that had not been happening before. So we did all of it, right? We worked with some of the most hazardous, cancerous contaminants out there.
Were you able to discover, did they share with you everything in there? What was in, and I'll tell you why I asked that question. In a past life, I manufactured industrial lubricants and cutting oils and things like that. And a customer was Lockheed in Fort Worth, Texas. And I went in there I was testing my cutting oil in this area. And of course, I had to get a background check to walk into that area. And when I got there, they were like, yeah, this is the machine. This is the box. This is the piece of metal that we're going to be cutting. And I was like, okay, well, can you give me a rundown of the percentages of what it is? No. How do you expect me to know what cutting oil to use or what to use on this if I don't know what's in there? They don't know, but you can't see this. You have to have an absolute top of the line clearance to know what's in because it was the drones. Yes. It's not a secret that they make them there, but it was drones is what they produced.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't find out. And so I had to go a little bit of hit and run on that one and try to figure out which is the best thing for that particular application. But eventually did, but it made it difficult. And I was just wondering if maybe that might have happened to you as well.
Yeah, the entire field struggles with it. Trade secrets are difficult.
Yeah.
There are rules in place that can help us with gathering information if we needed to. However, a lot of times we are working with the big picture and saying, okay, can you just tell me what the constituents are? Or getting a list of especially for metals, we can get a list of carcinogens, right? The metals that we would be concerned about the most and say, can you check these? Is this a constituent? And then we can go sample for the work that they're doing. Okay. So we wouldn't have to know all of it. But if we don't know, we can't find out. So if we don't know we're supposed to be looking for something, we can't figure that piece out for the people we're trying to protect. So some people up high that have those clearances, because you think about an entire fleet of aircraft, they can come back down, they get the information and say, hey, you guys need to go look for these specific constituents when working, if you have them at your base.
Okay, so, you spent these years as a safety professional, you had your experiences, which are, by the way, I think anyone would think were really cool. So that's awesome that you got to experience the things you got to experience. Fast forward now, in most of my, I guess the interviews I've done so far for this podcast have been safety people talking about issues for industrial type workers or different type of safety issues. One of the things that made me want to, when I came home for the holidays, was to find you here in Atlanta and interview you. You were actually looking out for the safety people themselves, and you focus on that now. That's why I said, life coach, professional coach, and I probably added that. And that's not a title you necessarily applied to yourself, but I kind of added that one to you myself. But you were looking at the worker, and you, like you mentioned before, safety people work themselves into the ground. They are incredibly hardworking people. Their hours are almost impossible, and they're never off. They're always just one phone call away from having a really crappy night. So now, can you tell me about, we know where that came from. You gave us a little bit about that. Can you tell me the process of how you started working with this, and you started coming up with ways to help these people? Can you tell me where you started and finish off with what you're actually doing currently?
Absolutely. So what I didn't share about this story of burnout is where it landed me, where I ended up on a couch, binge watching a Netflix series for 2 days with tears in my eyes, so much so that I sent my dog to daycare.
The very definition of burnout right there. The
very definition, right? So burnout is really, it's this low energy, low motivation space. And it's hard to see outside of it. And I inherited statistically the worst performing site in safety that we had. And
this is with who?
With Gulfstream.
Okay.
So I left the corporate office, and it was a site that I had been supporting, and they were like, you should go be the health and safety manager, which was great. I mean, you just don't turn down Southern California. You don't turn down a request directly from a vice president to say, come work for me, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a great experience. However, when I was at that bottom point, I had to realize that no one was going to save me. I had a team that was burnt out. I had people that were looking at me to protect them and create these programs and give them confidence in their safety program, a confidence that they had not had before I arrived. And it was a lot of pressure. Mind you, I'm still under 30 at this point, right? Like, I'm not 20, 30 years into the career field. And it really it made me look at things differently. And I really had to start out with the truth. No one was going to save me. And I had all the tools in order to be successful. And I was working with years of history that had gotten the site to this point. It wasn't because of my failure. And my non-negotiable, which was that I would not compromise my integrity. And my integrity as a professional. I'm a certified industrial hygienist, a certified safety professional. I work by a code of ethics. I worked really hard to be in those spaces. So I took a look back and said, okay, well, what tools do I have and what's lacking? And it was, like we all know, safety professionals out there, I was overworked and under-resourced. Mm-hmm. We knew up to the corporate levels, I knew that before I went out there, but we had not made the right cases to force the hands that could get us the right resources. And so really working on the mindfulness piece, where mindfulness, like, it's not just sitting in a corner and meditating, right? It is this personal awareness. It gives you greater access to relationship awareness. So I understood better the pieces that were influencing the performance of the overall program. It can't be on one person's shoulder. It couldn't be on the shoulder of my team of 3. And using that to say, okay, well, what are our problems? And we had no strategy. We were just going. It was like, what California regulation is changing today?
Oh, yeah. in the oil and gas industry, it's about the water. And it's every month. The EPA changes almost every month. Yeah.
It just changes, right?
I empathize with that. Yeah.
We're always chasing a moving target, right? So it was that long term, not necessarily figuring out how do we chase the target, but how do we chase the behaviors that give us the performance that we need. We need frontline supervisors to respect and implement the requirements that are there. We needed top line leaders to look at these leading indicators, the training, the performance, actually utilizing disciplinary action instead of just like, oh, that's just the way we've always done it, but saying, okay, we're going to educate you and make sure you understand why we're not going to do it that way going forward. And if you can't get with the program, here's a consequence. It only takes a couple of times for that to happen. And those are hard conversations to have. It's even harder when, as the safety professional, I say, look, I didn't hire the person. They don't ask me for a vacation. You go handle it. And those are some tough conversations. And we're really taking a look at all of our underlying problems, identifying how we were going to approach them, which was through education, through support, through proactive auditing, how we wanted people to interact with us, and being able to find out information where we weren't a silo anymore. They could just go to our site and look at, we had our own site. We could share information, highlighting people and their achievements, asking people to share their own safety tips in a video. So when people came to our site, they saw their colleague talking about their areas of concern, where not to step in front of a plane or not.
My co-host, he's with me a lot, is Justin Overstreet. He's the vice president of agency for a company called Wildcat Oil Tools. Very prominent company out there. He is hella bent on, his philosophy is, you're the first safety professional. You were here for a reason. You were hired for a reason. You're a safety professional. I'm here to give you an all-around strategy and how to handle things and a standard operation procedure. But he was about empowering his people. You are responsible for this, not me. You are. So no other point than that. It's just funny you saying that. It's like, yes, that was his strategy as well. And he's very good at his job, obviously.
It's so true, though. We say it's your responsibility, right? So we're easy to turn and say, it's your responsibility. If it looked unsafe, then why did you keep doing it? Well, you have to empower people to be able to make those decisions. And sometimes when you don't have enough information, you may not challenge it. Yeah. And if your leader or the person you would challenge in that situation doesn't have the right information or is led by fear, then they may not accept that challenge, right? So it really was an overhaul of the entire system to help us understand.
Well, you mentioned earlier, and it kind of popped something in my head about the burnout and saying, okay, well, you need to take some time off. Well, that's not as simple as that, because, depending on how the economic health of the country is at any given time, a worker with, 3 children, and you tell him, oh, you can take some time off, what's going on in his head? He's thinking, or he or she is thinking, my job may be on the line. I can't take a time off. I can't let them think that, that for whatever reason, it's not just that. You have to get them to accept that and be okay with it, and somehow instill the confidence and believe that, hey, we care about you. This isn't about you thinking that we're going to cut you loose. This isn't the first step of a firing. It is not. This is just, we caring about you as a person, knowing that you're human, you're not a robot, you can't do everything at all times, and that you need human things. And a lot of the things you just said, has come up in my personal history over the last few years, and that's mindfulness. I do a mindfulness journal every morning.
Oh, amazing.
A guided mindfulness, but still, listen, look at me. I'm a Tim Ferriss disciple. I did all the things that he said that, he kind of mentioned that, his whole point was he digs into hyper successful people to find out their habits and strategies that got them there. And he said after about 100 interviews, roughly 85% of them meditated. Yes. Even guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger and people like that meditated. And I was like, okay, there's something to this. And I added two things, personally. And this isn't a me. This is things everybody needs to do. One is do things you love.
Like, if you could see us right now, I just threw my hands up.
Yeah.
You should do more of what you love.
Absolutely. That's why, we were talking about my writing, and I was like, yeah, I want to be a writer. So I started doing it. Like, people have been on me about this for years. So I started, and so do things you love, because if you're not doing things you love, you're not living life.
Yes.
The other one is do things that are hard. So I started doing things that are hard, and I was telling my niece about what you can accomplish if you do things hard. I've lost 16 pounds in 38 days.
Wow.
And I did it because it was hard. Like, I could have lost them over 6 months, but I wanted to do it hard because there is something about humanity, or something about the psychology of the human, where accomplishing something, feeling something accomplished is just one more thing in life that fulfills your life. And like, I used to do triathlons, and I remember how confidence instilling a triathlon was, because it's so hard. Everybody thinks it's just a race, but they don't see the hours and hours and hours of work you put in for this. It's an incredibly difficult thing, and it takes just so much discipline to do it, because you can't go out and drink. You can't get no sleep. You have to sleep well. Your nutrition has to be perfect. And so, those are two things that I added into the mindfulness. But like you said, the mindfulness to me, we mentioned earlier, we don't have any clue as a society how lucky we are today, and how life is amazing here. And some people lose track of that for whatever reason. I think it's information overload a lot. It's a media, a scourge of provocateur media, which is what I think is the biggest key. And then the second biggest key is, internet. People on the internet too much. Misery loves company. Miserable people are all over the internet, and they want to bring you with them, and people get trapped in that rabbit hole.
They do. And there have been so many messages that you're not living life unless you are spending every waking moment creating someone else's dream. And it's the work hard, play hard, which is true. But there's also work hard, rest hard.
Yeah.
You learn that with triathlons, right? You work really hard, but you have to have rest. And the vitality of life is really why I made the transition that I did. Because I had this rock bottom moment, and some people will say you bootstrapped. No, I was equipped with tools to not only provide a better quality of life for myself, and more importantly, what I was really responsible for was providing that better quality of life for my team that reported to me, and let them know where we're going. Had one guy, he was a couple of years from retirement. He's still a couple of years from retirement. He says he's going to retire. I just asked about him 2 weeks ago, and they were like, no, he's still working. But he's still,
some people are workers.
Yes.
Some people are just workers.
Still edging on retirement, but there is a vitality of life that with a mindfulness practice you can experience, and there's something to be grateful for in that. Being a business owner, and you know this, there are days where it's scary.
Every day is scary.
I know. It's like, what am I doing? Why did I choose this?
3 years ago, we were a year and a half into it. We were a little over a year into it when COVID started.
Oh, gosh.
Oh.
It's scary.
Yeah.
But with a mindfulness practice, you incorporate gratitude. So when I'm afraid, or I am, feeling a feeling, even if it's undesirable, it's not something I want, I still have this ability to practice gratitude, to be thankful that I get to feel and I get to experience that in my life, because it means I'm living. I'm not just this robot. I'm not just checking the box. I get to be a part of my life and not ruled by everything else around me.
A quote by Steve Harvey I recently read: "Don't get up and say, I got to go to work. Get up and say, I get to go to work." You know how awesome that is to know you have a job? People don't get that. And, in my part of my mindfulness journal, it's not identifying, hey, I'm thankful for my parents. Hey, I'm thankful for, it's all, I'm thankful for, I have a comfortable mattress that helps me sleep at night. I'm thankful, I give thanks to Spotify for introducing me to music I would have never been able to find. Things like, there's so many things that we can see as blessings, and it's a lifestyle.
It is.
It's an absolute lifestyle. And the people you see walking around big smiles on their face, they're very mindful and gratitude-filled people. And I guess I'd say the key indicator to the journey, or I guess what would be the thing that started the mindfulness journey to me was, dealing with bouts of depression, for me, and not severe depression. I'm not going to compare mine to some other people that really, really, really struggle with that. But, it was a down moment, like you said you had. And I forget where I saw this poster, and I generally don't read inspirational posters, but this one said, if you're feeling really, really terrible and you're down and depressed, go find someone else to help.
Yes.
Stop looking inward. Look outward. There is nothing that will bring you more joy on this earth than helping someone else.
Yes.
Try it.
Yes.
Like, just go find someone, help them. For example, my brother and his family, we told me this story. They were going to church a couple of days ago, and there was a guy on the side of the road, broken down. They didn't really know that, if he was broken down or what his problem was, but when he came back from church, he was still there. He was an older gentleman. He didn't have a really, reliable vehicle. And my brother stopped and said, hey, is everything all right? Are you okay? He goes, well, I'm broken down and I don't, he said, this is a rural area, right? And so I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have a cell phone. So he called his son for him. The man cried and hugged my brother and told him he loved him for what he did. Like, that wasn't a hard thing to do, but that was a special thing to do. And so, you don't always have those opportunities like that, but you can call people. You don't ever know people's personal struggles. That's why, I stopped doing that. I heard a comedian, I can't remember her name, but she said that whenever someone's angry or mean or rude, imagine that their life can be a complete hell. So, and look, that's part of the safety world too, is, a lot of people that get hurt are because their mind's in a bad place, so I love all that you're doing, but I want to put some, now that I've, unloaded all that on you. You conjured up all this. When you started talking about that, it fired me up because I try to.
It's exciting. I'm receiving all of that energy and the transformation that it has brought to your life.
Yeah, and I want to share it with people. I want you to see this, because I was miserable for a large part of my adult life. I mean, it was so. You are now helping safety professionals. Can you dig a little bit deeper on? Is a company or your company?
Yes.
Exactly what you do in there, and just tell the audience a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I started as Colligan Coaching and Consulting, and everything I do is of service to others. I focus on health and safety professionals, but I actually work with people that aren't health and safety as well, because everyone hits these points or has the opportunity to hit these points. And I provide tools. That's really what I do. Whether it's from business strategy, the art of strategy, because you never get it right, or the practice of mindfulness. So we really look at what really is happening that is blocking you from having vitality in your life, that experience of life. And for some people that I work with, it's all personal, right? They want to work on their personal brand or how they react to people when they are triggered because, someone says, I don't need you, or they're upset, right? The life of a safety professional. Mm-hmm. And we work on how we keep their quality of life right where they want it to be, or the tools that get them back to the quality of life that they want to have more quickly. And that's what mindfulness does, right? For anyone that has meditated, a lot of the practices are really not getting your mind to be completely calm. It's about being able to observe what's happening in your mind and not attaching to it and letting it whisk you away. Acknowledging it and letting it go on about its way. Right? I read a study, it was like 6,000 thoughts a day. You cannot control all of them. You are going to go down that rabbit hole. How quickly do you get to have awareness to come back to the present moment? But when we talk about protecting people, it's those same distractions, right? If someone's having a bad day, it didn't just leave because they scanned their badge at the door.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
They take it home.
They take it home with them. They got it at home and brought it to work with them. Right? We are constantly protecting against those distractions. But safety professionals, they don't just clock in and say, okay, well, everything else is done. They get even more at work. Yeah. So, right, they're Absolutely. Distracted. And how do you create more mindfulness so that you can be more present for yourself and then others to give them those experiences or have the awareness around where other people are in their journey at that time? Because I got to shift how I talk to people. I could go in and say, hey, you have this that needs to be corrected, but I could tell they were having a bad day. So I may abort mission and go in and say, hey,
table this for tomorrow.
Yeah, how do I go and boost them? Great job on that presentation last week. Can you tell me more about X? Thanks.
But you have to be in the moment to recognize that.
You have to be in the moment. Mm-hmm. And that's what the mindfulness piece gives, to be able to be present, but then taking it home where even if you had a bad day at work, even if it was a long time, you're able to be more present in your life, whether it's a solo life or with a family.
Mm-hmm. Well, where can we find, you have a website or anything people can find information?
I do. So my website is SubenaColligan.com. Okay. Very easy.
I'll put that on the play card when I publish it. So the audience will be able to see that. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This is not the actual end of the podcast. This is a very special podcast. And, as I said, I'm from Georgia and I'm in Georgia for the holidays. And I'm in Georgia for the holidays and able to spend time with my family. And, so lucky to be able to meet you and interview you. And I thought, wow, okay, I'm in with this wonderful professional lady and I'm going to have a bring your niece to work day today. Yes. So my niece, Ada, she is with me. Say hello, Ada.
Hello.
So she's here with me today, and I wanted her to meet you because it's important to see, for young women, to see women who have, in the professional world, and have done very well. And I think it's a good, it's always good to see people like that and see, okay, this is what I can do. It's there. It's there, right? So I wanted Ada to... think about some of the things that she would like to know from someone who's been through a career and in the middle of a career and experienced some things. So, Ada, why don't you go right ahead and ask some questions?
I am so excited.
What are some of the practices that you did throughout your career that you contribute most to your success?
So I have a saying that is really near and dear to me, and it's one of my North Stars or guiding practices, and that is, you will go farther at the hands of people than on their backs. Mm-hmm. And it really positions how I treat people and the people that I allow to be around me and how they treat people. So I don't closely associate myself to others that are backstabbers or will walk on someone's back. And I think most of my success, one, I had to have some discipline in order to commit. However, people have really helped me get to every place that I've been and having that strong support network. And it's just about how you treat people. And it always feels good when you treat people good.
Always. Yeah.
How do you contribute your experience in the Air Force to your success?
Ooh. So I think I got the coolest experiences in the Air Force, but it puts you in this place at a very early age, right? Like early 20s, even like 19, 20, being responsible for a plane that's on the side of a runway and people saying, okay, what do you do next? Like, what? Like, I'm just barely
A multi-million-dollar plane.
Right, but then you've got like the base commander saying, I got other planes in the air that need to land, so we have got to get this runway back open. What do we do next? So it helped me perform very well under pressure. It also helped me scale how I lead, because I think sometimes I look at situations and I'm like, it's not that big a deal, but it's the end of the world for someone else.
Yeah.
In relation, I've seen some really big deals, but I understand how to approach more calmly, how to plan for stuff, and then also just understanding how important relationships are as well. Because when you get in the heat of the moment, you need that relationship to be really strong and that communication to be strong. And I learned that from being on a runway in 100-degree weather on a tarmac in New Mexico with planes on the side of the runway.
Final one?
How was it like being a woman in the Air Force?
Man. So I'm actually third generation military. My mom was in the Army, and she did not have a very great experience in the 70s. And she was actually anti me going to the military. Yeah. And she was like, absolutely not, over my dead body. Yeah. And I still went. My mom didn't die. But it definitely, there were situations where even, right, I joined the military in the 2000s, where people would say, you know, well, you should be a paper pusher, right? Like, you can't do those things. And, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about those challenges, and we have a place everywhere. No matter if it's in the military, there's not a lot of women in the safety profession in general, like 20+%. But
is that right?
Yeah, I think it was the best number that they had. I think Pam Woloski was the person that put it out. She said it's about 25%. It was the best that they had. But it also gives an advantage in being, you know, just emotionally connected and being able to provide a different perspective to people. So the Air Force was great, though. It was 6 years. I stayed the 6 and was out. However, I attribute my leadership and just that advancement. It was like hyper leadership training very early in my career.
You know, what you said about calmly solving problems, that is an absolute thing the military gave me as well. Like, people have always asked me, how do you stay so calm in these situations? I'm like, oh, I've seen worse.
Yes.
You know, so it's just so easy. I've been in hell. But, Subena, thank you so very, very much. You were the guest I thought you'd be and more.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so glad we got to talk about some of the things that you talked about. This podcast is really about safety and safety professionals, and being able to find someone out there actually trying to help them. You know, we're not just talking about the workers. We're talking about these people. And when I read about your burnout articles and the things you had written about, and it's those conversations I'd had. I've experienced this in both my interviewing and my actual work, because I call on safety professionals. So I'd seen this burnout in the oil and gas industry, and I wish you the greatest luck. I think it's wonderful that you saw a need and you're pursuing it, and I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show and accept the mission. please subscribe to the Mission Zero podcast on your preferred streaming service and be sure to give us a 5-star review.